Hello and welcome to India's World. The rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been a persistent feature of Middle Eastern geopolitics. Of late, however, an escalating war of words has broken out between the two countries on the eve of the Hajj pilgrimage. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has criticized Saudi Arabia over its management of Hajj after a stampede last year killed hundreds of pilgrims, including an estimated 400 Iranians. Describing the Saudi rulers as godless and irreligious, he said that the Saudi ruling family does not deserve to be in charge of Mecca. Saudi Arabia's top mufti, Al-Sheikh, has retaliated by saying that the Iranians were not Muslim at all. Tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia have been rising since Saudi Arabia cut ties with Iran in January following the storming of its embassy in Tehran by local people. That itself was a response to the Saudi execution of a dissident Shiite cleric, Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr. This year, there will be no Iranians going on the Hajj pilgrimage because of disagreements over visas and security arrangements. With these developments, the rift between the two countries is widening as they vie for influence in several conflicts in the region, especially Syria and Yemen. To discuss the new law in Iran-Saudi relations, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan. He teaches at Center for West Asian Studies of the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. We also have with us Ambassador Vivek Katju. He retired as Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. He was India's ambassador to Afghanistan, Thailand and Myanmar. He handled the Iran desk of the Foreign Office for a record number of 6 years. And we are lucky to have with us Mr. Qamar Agha, a distinguished journalist. He's an expert on the Middle East and was visiting professor at the Center for West Asian Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Professor Ramakrishnan, let me begin with you. Iranian citizens, although 64,000 had been selected for Hajj this year, will not be participating in the pilgrimage this year because of disagreements on security issues and visas. Is the war of words between Iran and Saudi Arabia a direct result of this?
The last year's stampede was an added feature of an ongoing kind of political struggle over religious differences over a period of time, particularly after the Iranian Revolution. The Hajj pilgrimage was used by Ayatollah Khamenei and the Hajj pilgrims from Iran for political purposes. The stoning of the Satan was done to the United States. It was stoning of the great Satan. And the anti-monarchist content of the Iranian Revolution was not only directed against the Shah of Iran, but also the monarchist regimes in the region, particularly Saudi Arabia. And the Shias in Saudi Arabia, in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, was radicalized through this kind of a movement. And therefore, there was a direct kind of linkage between the Hajj pilgrimage itself, which was politicized over a period of time. So even events like a stampede could become a political matter, and therefore this should not be treated as a religious element alone.
Okay.
But there is a long history of strife over that.
We will discuss that in a bit. Vivek, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has suggested that Saudi Arabia was not a proper custodian of the holy places, effectively challenging the legitimacy of the Saudi royal family, since the monarch has been styled custodian of the two holy places of Makkah and Medina. Why did the Iranian leader go to such an extent? This is something the Iranians have never done before.
I think this is not the first time that Iranians will not be going for the Hajj pilgrimage. If you recollect, between 1988 and 1990 also, no Iranian went to the Hajj. And that was a direct consequence of what had happened in 1987 when the Iranian pilgrims along with other Shia pilgrims were attacked, I think they were demonstrating against America and Israel, and the Saudis had they claimed to control them. They had to fire on them, which resulted in about 400 deaths. This time around, there is an added sharpness. And theologically, what has been said now has never been said in the past. It is really very strong that the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia should basically say that the Shia is not even a Muslim. And pointing to the Iranian Shia, he said that they are actually Zoroastrians. And at the same time, this was in response to what you will put out in your initial commentary, that Ayatollah Khamenei called the ruling family as godless, and that they were not following the Quran. So this is a new added feature which will have, to my mind, far-reaching sectarian as well as political consequences.
Qamar, the war of words is being escalated over time. The verbal exchange was accentuated further by Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, who tweeted about the bigoted extremism that Wahhabi top cleric and Saudi terror masters preach. Clearly, this is a direct reference to Iranian claims that Saudi Arabia has been backing the Islamic State. Why is the war of words sought to be expanded and escalated?
You see, there are a number of factors. You know, rivalry is very old. It goes back to Arab and Persian civilizations, then theological differences between the two, you know. Now they are widening more, as Ambassador Katju has just mentioned, you know. So that is continuing, you know. And the Saudi clerics, you know, have given a number of fatwas against the Shias. They don't believe that Shias are true Muslims, you know. They are not even Muslims now. So these are very old, that is continuing, you know. And then now, you know, a new trend has emerged, you know. After the Yemen and Iraq, what is happening in Iraq and other, in that part of the world, you know, there's an intense fight for gaining greater control over the regions and emerging as a leader. You know, both are trying to become leader of the different, you know, sects or different regions within Arab world, you know.
So, but is it really religious sectarianism alone, or is it
it's both.
A competition for geopolitical influence?
It is both, you know, because at time, you know, they are using religion, you know, sectarianism, you know, to gain, you know, there's a tremendous anti-Shia sentiments now at the moment in the entire Persian Gulf region, you know, especially after Syria, Iraq. We'll not discuss it now, but that is a fact, you know. The Yemen is also a factor. Yeah. So that is continuing for a very long period of time, almost 10 years now. Yeah. So this competition is going on.
I'll come to you in a bit. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again shortly. Don't go away. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the escalating war of words between Iran and Saudi Arabia and its possible consequences. Vivek, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that, you know, in the 1990s, after the rapprochement achieved between the then President Rafsanjani and King Abdullah, there was an attempt at bridging even the theological divide, and clerics both of Iran and Saudi Arabia used to meet to try to bridge this fundamental divide in the Islamic world. But all that is now a thing of the past.
No, why has all that become a thing of the past?
I think largely because of political reasons, but also logical split, which goes to the very heart of Islam, is not easy to bridge.
Professor,
the Iran nuclear deal has been an very important.
We'll come to it, but let me before that ask you.
No, one second. I just want to add one thing, but it's a very important point. You know, differences. You know, till Shah there was no problem. They were managing. Shah was not pro-Saudi. Was not looking
Shah was
towards.
writing letters to the Saudi king, calling him dear brother.
He was not looking towards the Arab world. You know, totally keeping Iran separate. You know, looking towards the West. Problem came after the Islamic Revolution, immediately after the revolution, and then followed by the Iran-Iraq war, and this Iraq's war on Iran, you know, or whatever you call it, you know, was subsidized by rather, you know, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. From there, you know, it continued in the war, you know, 8-year-long war, 1 million people died, you know, and mostly Iranians suffered, you know. Since then it was, but when Rafsanjani came, as Ambassador mentioned just now, you know, he tried to patch up this difference, but they were short-lived, it didn't last long, you know. Again, problem came with the toppling of Saddam Hussein. Yeah. Saddam Hussein's, you know, removal was not welcomed by the Saudis at all, because they, you know, the Shia majority gained power. So since then, you know, they continue to deteriorate relations.
Professor Ramakrishnan, which are the ongoing conflicts on which Iran and Saudi Arabia are on the opposite sides? We know they are on opposite sides in Syria and Yemen. In these conflicts, do you think a resolution would be possible if they continue to be on the opposite sides?
Some of these, war of words on these issues are exaggerated. Some are based on facts. This is also an extension of the traditional rivalry that they have. Yeah. But on Syria, yes, it was very important that the Iranian supported Bashar al-Assad's regime was opposed, and efforts fund was coming from Saudi Arabia and other places for toppling that regime. So that was adding up to this. In Yemen, the Houthis, Iran was saying that it's an internal matter. We are not supporting them, but Saudi Arabia is sure that Iran is supporting them, and that has escalated into such a worse kind of war. And added to that, what you have mentioned, the killing of Nimr al-Nimr in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, that kind of tension. Yeah. So on these, there are no immediate solutions. And too many issues are involved. Iraq was mentioned earlier, Lebanon. There are a whole range of issues that come up.
Yeah. Vivek, although the Iran-Saudi rivalry is at least 1,000 years old now, but they've tried to maintain a red line, which is that they would not interfere in the internal security matters of each other. Is that changing now?
I think it hasn't fully changed, because it's well known that there are Shia populations in very crucial oil-rich regions of Saudi Arabia, and equally there are Iranian Sunni populations actually along the periphery. So there was a kind of a, how should I say, balance here. And I think both countries have been very careful not to intrude into this area. But whether this will hold, I think only time will tell.
Well, Qamar, actually this is not holding, because in the last 2 months, Iran has claimed that Saudi Arabia is supporting groups working to overthrow the government in Tehran and to destabilize the country, in particular by opening a new front with Kurdish separatists. And Saudis, for their part, say that Iran is supporting Shia militants within Saudi Arabia.
These bickerings, accusation is going on, So, in fact, there are two groups which are fighting against the Iranians. One is the Kurdish guerrilla
and the Baloch,
and the other is Baloch. The Jundala. Jundala is based in Pakistan. This is the group. So generally, believe the Pakistani army at the behest of Saudi Arabia is working, supporting these Jundala groups. So these two groups are there. There is one more thing. What they believe, that Iran has created a Shia arc, which Professor has just mentioned, that Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. This is the most important part. This is the heart of Arab world. If that remains with the Shias, it's not acceptable. They say that Iraq Shias are in majority, but the region is dominated by the Sunnis, So they say that we cannot accept, the Shia majority rule in Iraq. And they are also saying, the Saudis, that democracy is not part of the Islam. They believe, it's a Western concept, and they said that is interfering with the traditional Arab system of governance. Whereas Iranians are promoting democracy because number of places.
Despite the accusations, my own assessment is that as of now, neither side is really going all out to subvert the others.
In July, Iran made these accusations.
These accusations have been there. I accept that. But I'm saying they're not going all out. Yeah. Yes, there is an intense struggle in the other areas of West Asia, but not within each other's territories. It's not all out.
I think it's changing. But Professor Ramakrishnan, since this is an increasingly volatile region, could the escalation of tensions become something much more dangerous? A tit-for-tat exchange of attacks within the other country's territory, which is what the Iranians have been pointing to and which is what the Saudis are also pointing to?
As of now, it's still a war of words, and there is an escalation because of so many developments that we have been mentioning. Added to that was the kind of, the Israeli factor added to this, Saudi Arabia's equation with Israel changing, and therefore the Islamic Republic's own credential is to fight that. Okay. And so with the developments, Stampede and others.
Qamar, I'll come to you in a bit.
So all these things together would make the war of words escalate, but I don't think that they will cross that red line of crossing the borders and then making, because both of them know that these are very important powers within the region, and the consequences will be very big.
Okay, we need to take a break again at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us, don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the escalating war of words between Iran and Saudi Arabia and its possible consequences. Qamar, you wanted to say something?
No, but I was saying, actually the proxy war is going on. What we see in Lebanon, Shia Sunni killings are going on. In Syria, intense fight, they're supporting, different groups, militant groups backed by the Saudi Arabia, and Iran is backing the government of Assad's government. In Iraq, we see the Shia Sunni conflict, the proxy war in the entire region, in Yemen also, same thing, the Iranians are backing Houthis, and Saudis are backing the last government, which was there in Yemen. So this conflict is going on. But as Ambassador has mentioned, both are, refraining from attacking or directly intervention. I mean, no intervention is taking place in each other's country.
Okay, Vivek, does Saudi Arabia feel threatened by last year's UN-Iran nuclear deal?
Of course it does. I think because it brought Iran back squarely within the politics and the security, with security implications of West Asia. And not only West Asia, perhaps in a sense it was the rehabilitation of Iran in the wider Islamic world and in the international community. Whatever the Americans may say, it brought Iran right back. And that has put Saudi Arabia in, I would not use the word panic, but very, very seriously concerned. And that is why there is an attempt at consolidating the Sunni. So my worry is that the theological split, which is now taking place, and is widening, will have very major repercussions all over the Islamic world, wherever there are Shia populations.
Let's talk about America for a bit. Isn't the US in a delicate position? Because on the one hand, you have a long-term ally like Saudi Arabia, and at the same time, you are promoting a thaw in relationship with Iran in the wake of the nuclear deal. So, they're calling for de-escalation, but what can they do to de-escalate things?
Saudi Arabia was very angry with the United States for reinstating Iran in the international community through the nuclear deal. And the political equation has been changing from that point onwards, and the escalation began. The Americans tried to, soften Saudi Arabia's stand, offered the other day some $170 million arms and things of that sort. So it wants to play that kind of a politics, but I think that is not keeping them mum on this fact, because this is about the control of the region, this is about assertion of their power, this is also about showing the world that we belong to two very different kind of civilizations and religious traditions, and therefore that is the ideological basis for the dominance within the region. So none of them wants to go down on that.
Okay. Vivek, with the US enjoying far greater energy security than ever before, fracking, or fracking is of course falling off, but the fact is that US is no longer dependent on anybody for oil. And the US has also announced a pivot to the east. So which basically means redeploying their naval warships to East Asia rather than in West Asia. How far would Washington be prepared to get embroiled in this escalation of war of words and the name calling between Saudi Arabia and Iran?
You know, I think till last year, the feeling was that the Americans will retreat and that they'll be asking regional powers to fill in the vacuum. Those who are critically dependent on the energy resources of the Gulf. I think today there is a greater sense in America that conflicts, theological and political, within West Asia can have very wide ramifications throughout the Islamic world. And therefore, even if they want to retreat, in a sense that retreat is difficult.
Yeah.
Now, therefore, my feeling is that they will try their very best to see that these divides are bridged and or they are contained. How far they'll succeed is an open question.
Okay.
But at the same time, one last sentence.
Yeah.
I think both in Tehran and in Qom, as far as the Iranians are concerned, and in Riyadh, there is a sense of great realism and caution too in their both diplomacy and secure approach to security.
Okay, all right. Qamar, has Saudi foreign policy become more aggressive and more assertive since the new king took charge? And to what extent do you see the hand of Deputy Crown Prince Salman in pursuing this aggressive Saudi foreign policy?
They are, Saudi Arabia is encouraging independent foreign policy at the moment, The push, it was started by, in fact, the previous king, Abdullah, wanted, They're trying to reduce their dependence on Western nations. They have created a 34-nation military alliance also, which is engaged now at the moment in Yemen, But they are too dependent on West. They cannot, I think, they're talking about all these, they're trying to distance themselves, trying to achieve, but they are otherwise, totally dependent on West for military supplies, for, day-to-day even management, or functioning of the oil, distribution of the oil or production of the oil. These are the two crucial sectors, they're totally, but yet, the differences has emerged, as Ambassador has mentioned, on Iran, because that is very good. Okay. So Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, even Egypt, and as well as they are trying to forge an alliance with the Turkey, this is sort of a Sunni alliance they are trying to develop, to reduce their dependence. But will they
we are running out of time. I want all of you to address one question, which is that if neither Iran or Saudi Arabia can provide leadership in the Middle East, then where should the people of this region look for leadership? Quickly, just in one sentence or two sentences.
It's very difficult, one leader can provide, leadership or to the whole of the Middle East, because there are so many
Not
sects.
one leader, one country,
two
countries together?
No, I don't think,
Okay.
at the moment maybe, but Turkey, there's nothing common between Turkey and Saudi Arabia or Egypt and Saudi Arabia, maybe leadership.
Okay, we are really running out of time.
Two sentences. One, I think despite the Deputy Crown Prince's adventurism, the innate conservatism in in the Saudi establishment will assert itself. But on leadership, I'm afraid it's going down the sectarian road, and that is worrying.
Professor Ramakrishnan, last word to you.
I think this rivalry is something that's old, as we said, and is going to continue. It's a quest for domination within the region at least, and that quest will continue.
Okay, we've run out of time. I would like to thank all my guests, Mr. Qamar, Agha, Ambassador Vivek, Katju, Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan, for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.